Having realized the true reason for Nesta's refusal to train at Windhaven, Cassian decides to reach out his hand one more time and train with her one-on-one at the House of Wind. But it is only after making a binding bargain that Nesta finally agrees to 1 hour of training, whose mind calms from the activity. In the library, Nesta acts on a whim to assist Gwyn with finding her book for Meryl, whose research speaks to the legend of the Valkyries, a fierce female warrior group. Even so, Nesta is willing to tackle another day of training, seeking out the temporary quiet of her thoughts. Her time training with Cassian begins to open many doors, including her feelings and attraction for the general, and a growing desire to help the priestesses in the library break out of their shells.
Hey there, we're Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
And we bring the tools of literary analysis to women-written novels, lighting up book talk from romance to romantasy. Think of it as your favorite fandom books treated with the same respect you give a classic in literature class, just with more humor and less homework.
Each season, we dive into one book, breaking down themes, imagery, and character motivations. Together, we combine our 13 years of literary academic training with our fandom fun to help you see your favorite books in a whole new way. We also analyze the story through 2 different literary lenses, sometimes more, giving you more than one way to look at the text.
This week, we're discussing A Court of Silver Flames, the most divisive book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. In this episode, we cover chapters 12 through 16.
For a complete list of episodes and the chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Before we dive in, let's talk about S.P.I.L.T. Spoilers, perspective, interpretation, language, and themes.
Spoilers. This episode covers A Court of Silver Flames with full context from the preceding books in the ACOTAR series. That includes Thorns and Roses, Mist and Fury, Wings and Ruin, and Frost and Starlight. If you haven't read those or the whole of A Court of Silver Flames, this is your only spoiler warning. Anything in SJM's other series will be saved for our Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks episode that airs this Wednesday.
Perspective and interpretations. These are just our takes, our personal reading of the text. We do not speak for Sarah J. Maas, and we know you'll have your own interpretations too. We love hearing them, so share away.
Language. We use explicit language, and that's just a fact. So keep your headphones in and tell any sensitive people to go away.
Someone just turns in the car. Go away. Themes. We will discuss tough topics like sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. We will do our best to flag heavier moments where we can, but listener discretion is advised.
As always, let's keep the conversation going. Tag us, DM us, or use the submission form on our website. And if you want exclusive content and live streams, you'll find us over at patreon.com/booktalkforbooktalk.
Can't get enough of analysis? Make sure to check out the Subtext Society Journal, where we write think pieces discussing the romance and romantasy genres as a whole, the ongoing conversations in the bookish community, and insights on the publishing world. Join us over at thesubtextsocietyjournal.substack.com.
This week, we ask ourselves, what does Nesta's relationship with the priestesses represent? Jack and I will break this down with different literary lenses at the end of the episode.
Themes we will see in this section include reaching out, quid pro quo, and vulnerability.
We start in chapter 12, and it is the first day in the training ring at the House of Wind instead of Windhaven, and this catches Nesta off guard. For those of you who need a reminder, as we discussed last week, Cassian and Nesta fought the night before. Nesta keeps saying, I'm not going to train in that village, and Cassian's finally figured it out. Nesta is remembering what Cassian said last night. Quote, "Everyone hates you." The words had lingered like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. I thought the use of bell was interesting, like an alarm bell or a mockery of wedding bells. Whatever it intends to be, it is definitely a feeling of unease and a lack of safety.
When you said wedding bells and the fact that it's a lack of safety, it reminded me of the beginning of So Long London by Taylor Swift. So long. Yeah. And then it hurt me. Okay. So in order to explain why they're training there and they're alone, Cassian just can't tell her because you're sensitive. Instead, he says, quote, "Moore has gone back to Valahan, and Reese and Farah are busy, so there's no one to winnow us to Windhaven. We'll be training here today." Like I said, Cassian knows to speak to Nesta's pride, which is not, "Hey, this is not great, so I'm going to be taking care of you." But I think this is what's training Cassian, that he needs to hide his truths in order to get closer to her. And I'm already thinking about when they start having sex and the fact that he's in love with her. And he hides his truth so much that he never says that he loves her this entire book.
Yeah. And to what extent is it because he's had to train himself? Because things scare Nesta so easily.
Yeah. So he has to keep it all to himself.
Now, Cassian tries to act like a predator in this situation. Quote, he added with a sharp grin that made her swallow, "Just you and me, Ness." Now, this is from Nesta's perspective, where Cassian seems to be in control. But when we switch to Cassian's point of view, we see just how vulnerable he feels. Nesta doesn't immediately stomp away from the training ring, which gives Cassian hope. Quote, her hesitation made his chest tighten unbearably, but he stomped on that hope, slowly folding his other sleeve. He wondered if she noticed his fingers trembling slightly. These two kids. What's hilarious to me is they try to show each other their tough side.
Yeah.
But really, they're just like trembling little children when they interact with each other.
It's so funny because they both know when the other person is being vulnerable too. You know what I mean? Like, they both see the other person's vulnerability and their quote unquote weaknesses. Because even Cassian, when he's thinking about why specifically Nesta wouldn't go to the training camp, he thinks, quote, Nesta would rather sit on a freezing rock in the icy wind for hours than look like a fool in front of anyone, especially arrogant warriors predisposed to mock any female who attempted to fight like them. I want this to be a moment where the reader, or in this case, our listeners, to realize that SJM is trying to make this a relatable moment. Because who among us would want to train amongst men? I already have a hard enough time when I started going back to the gym training in front of men. Guarantee they don't even look at me. Sometimes, unfortunately so, they don't look at me. And and just imagine going to a place where they actively hate you and will be judging you. So I really hope that this is a moment where not just the listener, but the reader is supposed to go, oh shit, I actually really understand her.
Yeah. This is a moment where we are meant to have empathy, not because she has pride, but because who wants to look dumb in front of men who already hate women?
Ugh, I just imagine. I don't even want to imagine it. I'm done now.
No. Yep, done. Cassian is a terrible negotiator, and he knows it because he's willing to make a bargain with Nesta that's open-ended just to get her to train for 1 hour. He will literally promise anything. Quote, anything short of you ordering me to fall out of the sky and smash my head on the earth. She didn't smile the way he'd hoped. Her eyes turned to chips of ice. You truly believe me capable of such a thing? I like this moment because we're going to see a couple instances in this week's episode, as well as next week's episode, that foreshadows just how the bargain's going to play out. I don't know how people feel about this. Some people might feel like it's a big letdown the way that the bargain is used. But here's one example, and there will be more, of Nesta thinks about how she's going to use the bargain, and it usually has something to do with, I don't want to do this, or go away from me.
Yep.
What is also telling about this is just how hurt she is by Cassian suggesting that she would be capable of like causing him harm or wanting to cause him harm. And this is an example of where Cassian's trying to use humor to ease tension, to create a barrier or shield, to protect his vulnerability. And it typically works, but not with Nesta. Yeah. And I think that's because what we're going to see is they are best together when they're vulnerable in indirect ways, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they're not willing to say, I love you, I want you to love me back, but they're willing to talk about their darkest moments.
They'll skirt around everything but the direct hit. Cassian, understandably, and Nesta, I don't even think she knows what is inside her heart. It is just a swirling of dark thoughts. Cassian really has to brace himself when it comes to Nesta. I mean, we keep talking about it, but it's just sad because Nesta is catching on. Quote, she surveyed him again, and Cassian willed himself to stand still, to appear open and non-threatening, and not like his very heart was in his bloody outstretched hands. Ugh, okay. I just want to think about that visual, though. His heart was in his bloody outstretched hands. That is to be implied that, like, he ripped his heart out of his chest, that it is alive and beating, and that he has this most gaping wound for Nesta in, like, his heart in his hands, and it's bloody. It's gorgeous, but it's also like approaching a wild animal and just being like, hey, do you like treats? I'll distract you, please. Please don't hurt me. And she's dangerous. And he's taming a wild animal in ways. And I hate talking about women as an animal. And I hate talking about men having to tame an animal. But I do feel like that's frankly what's happening, is that he's teaching Nesta to tame her own mind, to tame her own instincts through breathing, through training. And I don't think that Cassian could be with anyone else any other way. He's a natural teacher.
He is a natural teacher. And I view this less as Nesta being the wild animal and more as Cassian willing to walk on glass and hot coals and anything for a scrap from her.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, is he not the animal?
Yeah.
He's the one begging, not Nesta. So I think you could look at it either way.
Either way, no one here is alive or a human or a fae.
Yeah.
Or real. We are real, unless it's all a simulation.
It's all a simulation. We are in the mind of the creator. We don't exist.
Yeah. That's your new catchphrase.
That's my new belief system.
Yeah.
Now, Nesta's own thoughts betray her. And I appreciate that SJM isn't hiding Nesta's attraction to Cassian. What we get instead is that we see the flashes of her attraction that slip through her cracks, right? Slip through her iron walls or mind palace or whatever. So she's looking at his tattoos. No, muscles.
Tattooed muscles.
Tattoos and muscles. And she's looking below his abdominals and, quote, those ones that flowed into his pants like a golden arrow pointing to exactly what she wanted. And then she's like, oh no, stop thinking. It's just like a little Freudian slip, which I enjoy.
Golden arrow?
Yeah.
Just a golden arrow? That's such a funny way of describing it.
It's because his skin is golden, right?
Yeah.
But also
brown,
golden like the mating bond.
Hey!
Anyway, Nesta tries to get control of her sexual attraction. And she does it in a way that implies she's trying to punish herself, right? She's not allowed to have these thoughts about Cassian.
Amy and I go to the same gym. We work out together often. I have 2 gym crushes there, and I just know their abs are insane. Like, I just know it. And every time I wait for one of them to slip up and wear a slutty little top. And I'll be like, you're doing a crunch. Why is your shirt not falling? Why is it so in place? Why is it that my leggings are always rolling and yours mysteriously stays in place?
They glued it to their body.
They really did. That's because the muscular abs are so strong. They're holding the shirt to them. So Nesta's horny. I was about to say I'm horny. I'm not. I ate a lot of broccoli and Brussels sprouts before this, so I promise you the last thing I'm feeling is horny.
The listener really needed to know that.
It's also a warning to you. So she's just checking Cassian out, and we have this quote. Slowly her eyes trailed up his body, lingering on his carved pectorals and the Illyrian tattooed that swirled over one of them before flowing down his left arm. He might have flexed. Okay, it's funny. I couldn't remember if this was like her perspective or his perspective, but like either way, he flexed. And it's just funny, but it's also interesting because there's such a dynamic between sex, temptation, and compliance. Because everything about their dynamic is sex. Like, they're going to be eating dinner and I'm going to be like, oh my God, sex. They're going to be talking. It's, oh my God, sex. But this is building up a foundation of their dynamic. And What's so interesting when you think about their dynamic versus any other relationship in the SJM verse, this is not a spoiler, but they're the most, we're just going to bang it out and deny our feelings than any of the other ones. So I think that this whole compliance and temptation goes hand in hand and really sets up the stage for their relationship. Now, why does Nesta decide to take the bargain with Cassian? Quote, a bargain with Cassian. Nesta didn't know how she'd allowed herself to agree to it, to let that magic pass between them and mark her. But everyone hates you. Maybe it was that fact alone that had her agreeing to this insanity. So she's remembering Cassian's words saying that everyone hates her. And I worry that sometimes people read this book and they think, oh, she only took the bargain because it puts him in a vulnerable spot. That's not true. She thought about failing everyone, how everyone hates her. And the bargain, what it does is makes Cassian just as vulnerable as Nesta is in this moment. And I think that Cassian knows that. It's not about Nesta having control over Cassian. It's about the fact that in this moment, they are both extremely vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, it puts them on equal footing, right? Because training without the bargain, Cassian's in the power position. He's the teacher. There's a reason why teacher-student relationships are not allowed, even at college, and is called quid pro quo. It's about people in power putting others below them in vulnerable positions. And so Cassian is like, I'm not going to make you vulnerable. I already know you're vulnerable. So I will create a situation where you can have just as much power over me as I have over you, which I think is a great point.
Yeah.
Didn't even think of it.
Yay.
Now, like any eldest daughter, Nesta does not like being compared to her younger sister who has been deemed better than her, especially since Nesta's not willing to accept this about her and Feyre anyway. Nesta kind of resents that Feyre is better. Cassian tells Nesta when Nesta starts complaining, quote, your sister already possessed a skill you don't have and also lacked the luxury of time. Hunting to keep them fed had taught Feyre that skill set. Hunting, while Nesta had stayed home, safe and warm, and let Feyre venture into that forest alone. Just the slight comparison. And it's not even really a comparison. It's just Feyre was more active than you were, so she got to start at a different place in training.
Yeah.
It irks Nesta, and it activates, it triggers her self-hatred. And in my opinion, when she thinks about Feyre, and when she thinks about Cassian, because we're going to see it a couple times where she is so sure of his goodness, just like she knows Feyre is good and better than Nesta is, she weaponizes their goodness against herself and to justify her destruction. And we see it just in the simple act of like her not being able to balance. Later on, she thinks about training, quote, all basic stupid things and all things she failed utterly at. It's grammatically hard to say. Basically, Nesta's just like, wow, I suck. Why am I even trying? My sister's better than I am. And it's not good for her mental health.
What's hard is that Nesta doesn't even have a fake reason to dislike Feyre. Feyre's done nothing to her. Feyre has done everything for Nesta. She can blame Feyre, which she does, saying, you're the one who got me into this mess. But I think even a part of her understands that the reason why they're in that mess is because Feyre went to the Feyworld. The reason why Feyre went to the Feyworld is because she was trying to help them from starving. You know what I mean? So none of this is truly Feyre's fault. And that's part of the reason why I think Nesta goes after Rhys so hard is because there is a reason why she could dislike Rhys. Like there's a lot of reasons why people could dislike Rhys. His personality is reason alone. I like his personality, but some people might not. And I think that's just another thing that she gets to hold on to. But I love her dynamic with Feyre because she just sounds sometimes like a very petulant child. I think this is when the most of her pain and the most of her childishness comes with her relationship with Feyre. Quote, hunting to keep them fed had taught Feyre that skill set. hunting, while Nesta had stayed home safe and warm and let Feyre venture into that forest alone. Those skills Feyre had honed had allowed her to survive against the High Fae and all their terrors, but Feyre only had them because of what she'd been forced to do, because Nesta hadn't been the one to do it, to step up. Feyre will always be an example of her biggest failure of her life. Nesta's biggest failure at this point, no matter what she wants to say of, oh no, Elaine got kidnapped in the middle of the forest, or no matter what, the biggest failure is the fact that she did not step up to help. And she does not help Feyre at all, ever, at any stage does she. Even like in this book, she's like, hey, can you go risk your ass and not Elaine? And Feyre is the one who holds the power over Nesta, even though Feyre isn't even wielding that power. But Nesta just can't, because for almost a decade of her life, her survival depended on Feyre. Her survival still continues to be on Feyre. And the fact that Feyre is still kind. I think I bitch about Elaine later, but in case I don't, fuck Elaine too. She didn't step up either.
No, she did not. What I love most about Nesta and Cassian's relationship is that in a lot of ways, their capacity to care is equal. Nesta just doesn't like to care, but they both have a depth of empathy for others that we're going to see kind of be uncovered for Nesta. And what I mean by this is they both are so in tune with the other. They want to help each other get out of their heads when they're troubled, but like not be obvious about it. When Cassian and Nesta start talking about Emery and Cassian's eyes turned haunted, quote, perhaps it was to save him from reliving those memories, to banish that unwarranted guilt in his eyes, that Nesta nestled against the mat and said, cool down. I choose to believe Nesta softens herself and allows herself to engage with Cassian because he's listened. He's attuned himself to her needs. And so there's a reciprocity there. He's attuned himself, so she will attune herself too. But because it's Nesta and she has to be complicated, while she does desire to help him and help him not feel guilty, she does choose to restrain herself and her feelings and desires. Because at the end of the day, Nesta doesn't think she's worthy. She thinks she's undeserving. She thinks she's tainted. And ultimately, she doesn't want to hope for anything because she doesn't want to be disappointed.
There is an open vulnerability between the two of them. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with the fact that they're both physically exhausted. And I think it even surprises her because at one point, Nesta asks Cassian, do you like flying? The quote is, she didn't know where that question came from. Like you're talking about, there's a vulnerability here now. There's this connection between the two. And I think that it makes sense, especially when we are told that this is when her head does not have all of the roaring in it. It's quieted a bit more. She's now able to breathe a little easier, think a little bit clearer. And of course, now she gets to be a little bit more vulnerable with him. I like how the vulnerability is, do you like flying?
Yeah. It's sad. But, you know, what it says to me is because Nesta spends so much time controlling herself around Cassian, the fact that she asks a question she doesn't know where it came from implies, I want to know more about you. I want to keep talking to you, even though I could just stalk off and go read my romance novel right now. Yeah. It's an impulse she almost can't control, even though she's been trying to. And because all the negative self-talk has been restrained through her activity, the parts of her that are good and do like Cassian are unrestrained. And so she is going to keep engaging him.
Yep.
Like I said earlier, Cassian and Nesta may both try to assert their dominance with one another, but deep down, they're just two kids afraid of getting hurt. Cassian tells Nesta, quote, I wanted you to know that I don't hate you. She weighed whatever the hell lay in his stare, likely more than was wise to let her see. But she said quietly, and I have never hated you, Cassian. Woo!
Oh my God. That's so hot.
It was so sad.
Romantic.
But it means so much for Nesta to be able to say that, for her to open up. But let's also notice Cassian has to open up first before Nesta's willing to reciprocate.
Yep. Although I think like one of the next lines, Cassian's like, she said my name.
Yeah, he's like, I'm so shocked she said my name. I've never heard it before.
Yeah. It was like, you guys. I just like to imagine that there's a scene with Asriel goes, okay, Nesta said that she doesn't hate me. And then she said my name.
Yeah.
I think we're mates. I think this is it.
Feels like conversations I've definitely had. And then he touched my hand, and it lingered a little longer than it needed to.
I will say it's harder that those conversations don't happen as much in your 30s. Not necessarily because you don't have those moments, but because I think you know how lame they sound.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I have to preface it with you sometimes where I'll say I'm having a 20-something-year-old moment. And then he decided to work out next to me. And then I said, wow, you're strong. True story, guys.
True story.
That's my new thing, is telling men that they're strong at the gym.
She's done it multiple times.
I had a memory unlock as we're just talking about how there's a vulnerability of being open and being honest. And I was just thinking, yeah, like, why aren't we just more honest? And this past weekend when I was at a bar, I was very drunk, and this guy came and was hitting on me, and he was a decade younger than me. And I think because I was drunk and knew I wasn't going to do anything with him, I was very bold. And I was asking him, I was like, what's your plan here? Because he lives with his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend. And I was like, what's your plan? You want to take me back to your place and eat me out there? And he was like, no, I'll take you back to your place and eat you out there. And I was like, damn, the answer's no. But I also was like proud of myself for just saying, like, you don't get sex. You would get this. However, you don't get any of it because you're but a child.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that before or after you told him your age?
Before.
Okay.
And then I specified, I was talking about it with my therapist, and I remembered more clearly. I was like, I'm a bit older than you. He goes, you won't be the first 30-year-old I've dated. Oh my God, I'm 30. Thank you.
We're moving on into chapter 13, and Nesta's self-loathing doubles down now that she's not in training. Quote, she was pathetic for being so weak, pathetic for now being unable to walk so much as a step without grimacing. So despite the movement calming her mind, now that she's like, oh, I'm sore, she's like, well, fuck that. I'm terrible. It is also, though, important for the reader to recognize that this is a signal that physical training will be important for Nesta, because she was self-critical, but not this self-critical while she was training. It's also an interesting contrast to how Cassian thought just the last chapter, oh, she did so well. Later on, Nesta thinks, quote, not that she had anything better to do with her time, her day, her life. Whatever clarity she had felt in the training ring, levels and levels above, fogged up again. Whatever calm and quiet she'd managed to capture in her head had dissipated like smoke. Only moving would keep it at bay. I call this out because training helps keep this at bay, but we also have to remember the other things Nesta has done that are physical. Sex, dancing, those are other ways that she's escaped. So it's no surprise that physical training would accomplish the same thing for her.
Yep. I also think this is going to be really good setup to how we see Gwyn handling her own self-loathing and her own trauma. So just remember this, guys.
Now, Nesta encounters Gwyn, who's looking for a book because she got the wrong book the other day from Meryl. And Nesta goes on a quest to help Gwyn, which we all might be like, what? Why? During this time, we see Nesta interact with some of the priestesses. And one of them, quote, was so trembling and nervous that even Nesta had used her most gentle voice and been unable to shake the heaviness in her heart as she walked to the first level reading area. I think it's important for us to recognize this impulse to help Gwyn find a book, the way she reacts to the priestesses who are nervous to interact with her, for whom she intends no malice, shows the depth of, or the capacity Nesta has to feel empathy. And that's especially important when you think about the fact that she may have some similarities or identify with the priestesses in some way. So long as she doesn't feel judged by them, she won't judge them either, and she's capable of putting herself in those shoes.
Yeah. It takes a lot for her to realize, though, that these women are not judging her. It's this realization that they have their own trauma that's so much bigger than herself. And I think that's one of the first times in growth, at least in my experience, was removing the I in everything, People don't think about you as much as you think they do. You are not someone's concern as much as you may think you are someone's concern. Except Amy, she is always my concern.
She thinks about me way more than I realize sometimes. Because
it's true.
Everybody knows me before I even meet them.
It's true. So I know we all know Gwyn. We all love Gwyn. I fucking love Gwyn. I am proud of myself for not dyeing my hair red for this season. Sometimes we stay strong. Now, I want to remind everyone that right now we are reading early chapters. So we really need to focus on these early chapters of Gwyn. I think when I talk about her, people might imagine the amazing badass at the end of this book, right? The fighter, the Valkyrie. That's not the case. We have to know who she is now because that's part of the core foundations on who the badass Valkyrie is built upon. So I have 2 quotes. First one, quote, "Because I don't like to fail. I can't." Gwyn shook her head. "I don't want to make any more mistakes." Another quote, "I cannot stand to fail them in anything, especially someone as demanding as Meryl, even when it seems trivial." So this is me going through the psychoanalytical, psychological lens, whatever you want to call it. And we don't know any details about Gwyn at this point. We know that she's there for traumatic reasons. I think at this point we know that there's likely assault involved at Shangri-La, where she was living before.
Sangrava.
Where was I going with that? Sangla. I'm trying to enunciate everything else in my life, and I'm struggling here.
There's a hotel chain called Shangri-La.
Okay, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's funny. So we don't know much, but what we can take about Gwyn right now is that she takes responsibility for things that are likely not her fault. I'm not saying that we know exactly what she's thinking about, but for the pieces of information that we are given, we can guess that it's probably somewhat related because that's storytelling for you, baby. And I really like Gwyn as a character because I feel like she's a good counter to Nesta, while Emery is someone that Nesta can relate to in different ways.
But that doesn't, yes, agree. My butt is not a bitch slap in your face.
It's a bitch slap to my butt.
I think that Gwyn, although different, although the counter to Nesta, I do think that Nesta's capable of identifying the ways in which they're similar. Right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Gwyn is extra hard on herself in a way that she probably doesn't need to be, but Gwyn probably thinks she deserves it. Nesta can relate to that.
It's the right amount of relatability that you have with friends, right?
Yeah.
There's similarities, there's relatability, but then there's also differences.
Right. Exactly.
Except for us.
We have no differences. Except bra size.
and pant size, but I'm coming for you.
Yeah, you are. Here's where we start to see the friendship forming between Nesta and Gwyn. Quote, "Gwyn didn't seem to need more than that, thankfully, and clutched the book to her chest like a treasure. Thank you. You just saved me from a terrible tongue lashing." Now, why did Nesta do it? She probably empathizes in some way, just like she did with the librarian or the priestess she met earlier. But I pay attention to Gwyn's body language here. The fact that the book is being clutched to her chest, not as a shield, but as a treasure. The connotation speaks to how much Nesta's actions mean to her, which is supposed to signal to us, oh, there's a relationship forming.
Yeah. I really like the use of religion in this book. I think it's very interesting, especially when it's coming from Gwyn, because Gwyn tells Nesta, quote, "We honor the mother and the cauldron and the forces that be. We have a service at dawn and at dusk and on every holy day." Nesta must have made a face of distaste because Gwyn snorted, "It's not so dull as all that. The services are beautiful, the songs as fair as any you'd hear in a music hall." There's a couple things. One, in general, in religion, it's hard for me not to come with one big, like, okay. But that's just because I was a cradle Catholic. That's the thing. You can't take away your cradle Catholicism. It's just what you are. even if
Mhm.
you don't practice. So I
Mhm.
am very sensitive when it comes to religions in book, especially since I'm not a practicing Catholic. But I'm particularly sensitive to religion in this book, in this series, because the first time we experienced the religion in this world was with Ianthe back in Mist and Fury. And as we all know, Ianthe was a corrupt bitch. And now we're meeting Gwyn. So we're starting to get a different taste of what religion can be. And she lists a couple things. We've heard the mother, we've heard the cauldron, we have not heard of the forces that be.
Mhm.
It's also
Mm.
giving the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? There's always three. But I appreciate what's going on. But again, the forces that be, hello, SJM, introducing a new thing here. What I do want to point out is the fact that Gwyn called out the cauldron. And not just Gwyn. We're going to hear Cassian say it a couple times, cauldron, boil me, or something like that, right? Like,
Mhm.
just like,
Mhm.
by golly, that cauldron. And we have to remember that Nesta herself is made by the cauldron, is part cauldron herself. She took the cauldron's power. I think that there's some kind of Messiah idea coming from this. She is born from the cauldron. It's very Jesus, right? Like it's very,
Mhm.
she is birthed from this God, from this religion, essentially, where everything is born from. And she has the cauldron's power. So therefore, she is almost like a god herself. And they talk about her being similar to a death god, but in the contrast of Nesta amongst these priestesses, I find religion to be very interesting in this dynamic with her, Nesta. So, do they honor the cauldron? Are they going to honor Nesta? How can the cauldron be bad? Do they worship her? Just these were random thoughts that I was typing, and I don't know when I typed those.
Well, it's interesting that Nesta doesn't recoil at this idea that the priestesses worship the cauldron because the cauldron turned Elaine, turned her. She fought it. She's haunted by its power, essentially.
Yeah.
And yet she doesn't think poorly of the priestesses for worshiping the cauldron.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's either a blind spot in SJM's writing or Nesta's able to disassociate the cauldron she encountered from the religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really get into it.
No, we do not. We don't get into the questions of this whole sanctuary situation. Is it just for priestesses? Do you have to be a priestess to join? Gwen says that you can be there until you're ready to leave. Is there a rule to that? Are you not allowed to leave? Like, I know she gets to leave, but I think you should be allowed to do day trips. Like, this feels a little prisonish.
To me, it read more like they choose not to leave.
Okay. I have questions, but yes, clearly they're allowed to leave. She gets to leave later on, but
Right.
obviously they all want to stay. And
Mhm.
Gwen and all of the priests, the way that they go about life brings a different perspective to Nesta. Quote, "This whole place was utterly silent. The only bit of color and sound came from Gwen. She would remain here, locked beneath the earth for the rest of her immortal life? It seemed a shame. Understandable for what Gwen must have endured, yes, what all these females had endured and survived, but a shame as well. The priestesses are all underground. They're working through their own trauma, and Nesta feels bad for them. And it's like, girl, what do you think you're going through?
Mhm.
You're
Mhm.
working through your own trauma. And although she might not be, quote unquote, stuck underground, she is having to face her own darkness, right? She is
Mhm.
facing her own underground of her psyche, you can say. And I think this is also a great reminder that Nesta, too, was also violated and in her own way deserves to be. I mean, everyone who's been hurt deserves to be there, but she was not only assaulted, but she was violated by being forced to become Fae and being
Mhm.
forced and held down under the cauldron. And there is something about healing with other women who have also struggled that I find to be very powerful in womanhood. And if you're struggling, highly recommend you find a women's group. Anyway, Gwen is also the light. She is color. She will later on be singing, and her hair will literally light up and will never come back to that again. I forgot that happened. Opposite to Nesta, but the same. When Gwyn tells Nesta about the Valkyries, Gwyn says, quote, "They let themselves die rather than face the shame of their lost battle in surviving when their sisters had not." That is so similar to Nesta, of not wanting to face her own shame. And I know that it sounds honorable, right? They're so proud that they couldn't face their own shame. But isn't that what Nesta's kind of doing, where she's so proud that she cannot face her shame that she would rather let her life waste away than having to face her own shame and mistakes?
Yeah, it's such a great point. I never really made that connection. But it's true, because just like how Nesta's like, oh, it's a waste that the priestesses are going to stay underground the rest of their lives. It's the same about the Valkyries. It's a waste that they've lost this entire warrior group and practice because they were too proud or too hurt to try to heal.
Yep.
Take a sip.
Take a sip.
I'm listening to Bonds of Hercules because I needed a pick-me-up. And the narrator does a good job with enunciating.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I just need to listen to more people who enunciate.
Had you listened to Bonds yet?
No.
Oh, okay. It's really good.
I didn't realize you had listened to Bonds.
I fucking love that series. Actually, guess what came in the mail? I knew you needed to pick me up. I was trying to figure out when, but you mentioned Bonds, so I opened mine. I won't show it to you, so you can. Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
It's so pretty.
Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, so pretty.
And then,
oh,
one day I might go through a sleeveless phase, because look at that.
It's so pretty. I love it.
And my Silver Elite came in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'll show you that one. Honestly, I like Bonds more, but I just really love Silver Elite.
Oh, very pretty, though. I love the colors.
Yeah. It is very, very pretty.
Yeah. Oh, that's gorgeous.
Right?
That
so
is
much
gorgeous.
better than...
Yeah.
Your pick-me-up is going to come with another pick-me-up of it physically.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. I'm glad I saved it. Perfect timing.
It is, yeah. All right. Let's keep going.
All right. We are now in chapter 14, and Nesta goes through another day of training and, of course, complaining about being sore. And so Cassian offers to help Nesta stretch, because we've never seen that page played before, ever. Quote, "She had no idea what he was asking, but she nodded." So Cassian's like, "May I?" And she's like, "Okay." Which I find hilarious, because, and Nesta does this a couple times in this episode, where she shows inherent trust. Like, she's just like, I don't doubt you. Yeah, I don't even ask myself if I should doubt you. I'm just like, okay. And that's a different type of vulnerability for Nesta. And I think it's only in the space where Cassian is the teacher, because after that first day, she realizes he's not going to judge her. He's going to be professional. And so she feels safe to be vulnerable there. So long as she doesn't feel judged, she's capable of opening up.
How long until I use that line at the gym? Can you help stretch me, please?
I would be shocked if you ever did that.
My therapist and I are working on me giving less fucks so that I could do something like that. You would just run. You would abandon me.
I would abandon you and then film you from afar and zoom in.
Creep, that's exactly what I want. That's good.
Yeah, no, I know.
As you were reading your section, I was already trying to play out in my head how I would want it to go. And in my mind, we're both on the mats. Not you. You're in the corner filming me. And I go, "Oh, cramp, help, please.
I have a Charlie horse."
No, not sexy. Okay. Is your name Charlie? Would you like to be my horse?
I did. That's not what I said.
So when Cassian checks in on Nesta sleeping later, the house shows him that she ate. And the house is all proud of it. Quote, as if the house was showing him precisely how much she'd eaten, as if the house was proud of what it had gotten her to eat. Good work, he muttered. Food is protection, and I'm going to keep on my little case here, but food is also sex, because he saw a bare shoulder and he got horny for her and then was like, oh shit, you're actually tired. Maybe I should not look at that sexy bare shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can tell that SJM was working out a lot when she was making this book. You cannot tell me that SJM was not a full-on gym rat while she wrote this book, because the way that he talks about squats, the way that he talks about the importance of stretching, and Nesta works out really hard, and Cassian is teaching her about the importance of stretching. Quote, you need to get lactic acid out of your muscles. That's what's hurting you. And I was just like, all right, so you're fucking telling me that this world has lactic acids, but does not know how to do a C-section?
Lactic acid.
My point holds.
No, okay, but about the C-section, they do mention cutting Feyre open and how it's dangerous.
My point holds. You're telling me that this world has lactic acid, and they can understand that, but they can't understand how to safely cut open a belly. Anyway,
I don't know what to tell you.
I felt attacked, and I was telling Cassian in my head that fine, I'll be better about going to the gym. But this is me arguing with Cassian. But sometimes you go to the gym prepared to stretch, but then the machine or bench that you want is available. And by the time you go for it, and by the time you're done stretching, it's going to be taken. So you don't have an option, Cassian. Okay?
Yep.
And then I was at the gym and I was like, I'm going to stretch. And kind of did. Not really.
Now, as Cassian and Nesta talk about being sore and the recovery process, we are reminded just how much Nesta is haunted by memories of Cassian near death. She, quote, saw him hauled in unconscious, his guts hanging out, saw him in the sky, death racing at him until she screamed for him, saved him, saw him on the ground, broken and bleeding, the king of Hybern about to kill them both. Cassian's face gentled, as if he knew what memories pelted her. I'm a soldier, Nesta. It's part of my duties, part of who I am. Now, I read this quote because it's a reminder that what is normal for Cassian is not normal for Nesta, but the same can be said otherwise, right? Vice versa. What was normal for Nesta, especially as she was human, was never Cassian's normal. Now, I can't remember if I'm looking, it's not structuralist lens. I think it's a formalist lens is what I'm using. I'm going to read another quote that Nesta talks about when they talk about her relationship with her parents. Nesta says, quote, I was my mother's creature. She said it with such cold it nearly froze her tongue. Now, this comment in and of itself is so telling. Nesta was a creature created. Therefore, what is her mother? Frankenstein. Sorry. I'm so clever.
You crack yourself
a monster.
Up.
I do.
It's Frankenstein. It's not true. I don't know.
Frankenstein.
Stein.
I think Young Frankenstein, I think, is where that's from. Just this one comment, though, I was my mother's creature, tells you a lot about how Nesta views herself as well as her mother.
Yep. It truly removes Nesta's humanity. In this, she's not a daughter. She's not a human. She is not a person. And I meant to say person, human, then daughter, because that was going to be the most impactful part. So I'm going to come back to it. She's not a daughter to her own mother. She is a creature. And Nesta has been dealing with the struggle of the loss of her humanity long before she turned Fae. Her humanity was stripped away by her mother a long time ago.
Which we're not surprised by because of how Fae reviewed their mother. And how negligent Mother Archeron was.
Yep. I think that's another reason why Nesta can't stand Feyre, is that Feyre is so compassionate and understanding. There was another previous book where Feyre said, I think Nesta feels more deeply and more powerfully than any of us in order to explain the Nesta-ness. So I think that's another hard part where the sister just keeps getting her. So at this point, Cassian and Rhys go to the spring court, and Cassian's got some mad allergies. And all I can say is, girl, same. Where's my Zyrtec?
Cassian is going to the spring court with Rhys to meet with Eris. This is the start of Cassian always having a companion when he goes to meet with Eris, because they made the mistake of letting Cassian go alone last time. And it's important that we see Cassian with someone at his side, especially Rhys and Nesta, who are his companions, because he learns how to act like a courtier through mimicry of them. Quote, Rhys said nothing, revealed nothing. Cassian followed his lead. In the future, Cassian's mostly going to be with Nesta when they go to meet Eris, and I point it out because by the end of the novel, Nesta's going to think, wow, Cassian, you're a courtier. Oh my God, it's hot. So we need to clock the fact that Cassian is trying to mimic Rhys in this moment, and he will try to mimic Nesta in the future as well. Now, I do want to point out the fact that there are some side comments made that speak to the Mor and Eris mystery. So Eris keeps insisting that it's not what it looks like. He didn't leave Mor at the border of the Autumn Court with fatal wounds with the intention to let her die. He also says, oh yeah, I think it's also taking her these 500 years to finally figure out what my intentions were. Which, what does it take 500 years to figure out?
Why now?
Right. So Eris specifically says this, quote, perhaps you should ask Morgan whether that is true. I think she finally knows the answer. Cassian's head spun, and the relentless itching resumed, like fingers trailing along his spine, his legs, his scalp. Now, I do wonder if it has to do with just how abusive Baron is, and just how volatile Baron and Keir together would be. But I also feel like it's more than that. Does Eris know her sexuality and didn't want to trap her in a marriage? Like, I think there's so many.
I have my own theories that in my mind, it's just true. Where, okay. I mean, and maybe it's not as detailed, but yes, I think that he knew about her sexuality. I think that's part of the reason why she's so scared of him, is because she's scared that he'll admit it. And I think that she didn't know the reason why he's kept all of this a secret until more recently, or at least is suspecting it. And what that secret is, I don't know. I think Mor lied about something all these years.
I think so too.
That she might have said something like, oh yeah, Eris didn't care, when Eris might have done a little thing to show opposite. But I just don't like Mor either, which is unfortunate because she was attacked. I dislike her for other reasons, I swear.
SJM just needs to write a book from Mor's perspective, and we'll get over it.
She's going to do such great work where I will one day I can't stand Mor, I can't stand Elaine, and it makes me a bad feminist. Like, I need to start hating more men in this book series.
You do. Now, I do want to note that Cassian's physical reaction to what is happening, it reads like it's tied to his allergies, but we know from his last encounter with Eris that every time he tried to think courtierly, or to be like a courtier or understand courtier speak, his thoughts would get jumbled and his head hurts. And his head hurts right now. And I'm just pointing it out because his physical reaction to the environment is mirroring his reaction to what is actually being said. And I think it's clever on SJM's part.
I really like this scene. I enjoy the scene quite a bit, especially Eris's speech about Tamlin, which I would like to discuss. So bear with me here. Quote, Eris looked toward the hills beyond the orchard, green and gold and glowing in the sunlight. They say a beast prowls these lands now, a beast with keen green eyes and golden fur. Some people think the beast has forgotten his other shape, so long has he spent in his monstrous form. And though he roams these lands, he does not see or care for the neglect he passes, the lawlessness, the vulnerability. Even his manner has fallen into despair, half eaten by thorns, though rumors fly that he himself destroyed it. I love the description of Tamlin. I love this. I don't want to say third person because this obviously it is third person, but they're talking about Tamlin as if he's a fairy tale, as if he's this mysterious monster. But one of the most fantastic writing moments that I would like to point out is notice how Eris looks into the distance and notices the green and gold of the sunlight. You never hear green when you're mentioned a sunlight. I don't look into the sky at all and see green, but it then goes to describe the beast as having green eyes and fur immediately. We are seeing that Tamlin is the physical embodiment of the spring court, even in his form. And as Amy was pointing out, there's a chaosness to this. Cassian is struggling to breathe here. There is this wilderness going on. And I love it because I think in the spring court kind of had this rep as being very frilly, of not being a very serious court. And now it's this lawless place with a beast. And I would argue that Tamlin is more resembling of the beast from Beauty and the Beast now than he was in ACOTAR, when people were saying this is just like Beauty and the Beast, when in actuality it was very much like the Scottish folk of Tamlin.
Lynn. Yep. Yep. When fans have theories that Elaine and Tamlin are going to end up together, I can see it because she's the beauty.
Yeah.
And he's in his beast form, kind of trapped himself in that beast form. And Nesta explicitly states later on, Elaine would love the spring court, right?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a wide choose with her, Lucien, and Tamlin. And if you want to throw Azriel in the mix, I'm okay with it.
I am okay with it. Absolutely. I think there's been plenty of clues of Elaine being High Lady. There's been little things. I'll point them out. But I think we can all agree that we know Lucien is going to be the High Lord of Day Court. Huh?
Of somewhere.
The Day Court. Yeah.
It could be anywhere. Like, he'll be a High Lord somewhere, is my feeling.
His father is Helion.
I know.
He shows up in the Winter Court. It's me. I'm the High Lord now.
What if Eris dies? And then he ends up High Lord of the Autumn Court. We don't know.
I can't handle the thought of Eris dying.
Really?
Yeah, I don't like that. I was more on board with Azriel dying than Eris dying.
Oh, there's some Az people who are screaming at you right now.
We love Daddy Azzy. He just has so much healing to do.
So many problems.
Yeah. So we see that Tamlin's self-destructing, just as Nesta has been self-destructing. And then we also learn that Rhys has been trying to help Tamlin and has been failing and has some frustration at the fact that he hasn't been able to reach Tamlin. How much of his frustration with Nesta is the fact that she is the second person that he is failing to help?
Great point.
This is just some more of these moments where people look at this and say, Rhys is an asshole because how did he change so much? And he's an asshole the whole time. And let's look at Nesta, because Nesta's pointing out his real character. I think there's a lot of good glimpses of Rhys. We just need to pay attention.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And we talk about this later too. Rhys is failing.
Yeah.
He's failing Tamlin. He's failing Nesta. He's failing Feyre.
Yeah.
Her pregnancy, and he's not going to be able to find a cure to her situation. This is probably the worst Rhys has ever felt about himself. I mean, let's forget Under the Mountain.
Yeah.
That's a different situation. But as a person in power,
as a mate, as a father, as a High Lord.
Yeah. As a friend, he's failing everybody. He is an asshole. However,
he's in one of the worst places, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is the second worst place he's probably ever been.
Sorry for cutting you off. You just made a good point.
No, it's okay. Totally okay.
I mean, it's just like, I that's hitting me. I want everyone to have that hit them hard too. Rhys is at his all-time low. Mountain aside. Oh, yeah. Hold on. I'm enunciating now. Mountain aside.
Good job. Thank you. Which reflects Nesta's situation. Nesta, Tamlin, Rhys are all at the lowest they've ever been.
Yep.
And no wonder why Rhys is so mad at Nesta. He's really just mad at himself.
And wouldn't you say that we are always the angriest at the people who remind you of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And isn't Rhys just holding a mirror to Nesta and like kind of calls to like, and these two people who are failing those around them?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because Rhys is failing Feyre, just like Nesta failed Feyre.
Yep. We're back with Nesta, and she's tired again. And this time, though, she wasn't able to see Gwyn at her time at the library, so she's sad. and the noises are back in her head. So she decides to go back to the stairs. Quote, "The gloom beckoned, challenging her like the open maw of some great beast, a worm, poised to devour her whole." Like the Mittengard worm? That Farah faced. I feel like this is another great counterpoint, a great balance to when Nesta was facing down the shadows on level 7, which we haven't gotten to yet. But I think this is a nice prelude to that moment.
Yeah, it is good. And I will talk more about that when we get there, because I think this is a good point to remember for what I'm going to say later, which is how everything about the house reflects Nesta. I've said it for the last 2 episodes. I'm going to keep talking about it. So when Nesta gets back to her room, she's had a long day. The house has prepared a little gift for her. Quote, "Apparently it had noted her request for a book the other day and deemed The Great War too dull. The title of this one was suitably smutty. I didn't know you had dirty taste," Nesta said wryly. The house only responded by running a bath. "Dinner, bath, and a book?" Nesta said aloud, shaking her head in something close to awe. "It's perfect. Thank you." Now, if we continue to use the psychoanalytical lens on Nesta's relationship with the house, which I'm going to, I interpret this as Nesta wanting kindness for herself, right? She wanted to interact with Gwyn, didn't see her. She hasn't been very kind to herself the last few days. So, because Nesta's unable to be kind to herself, because she hates herself, her subconscious is acting through the house to provide her the comfort that she needs. And what the house does in this moment also establishes the path to Nesta's heart: food and books. And that's how all of Nesta's meaningful relationships in this book will proceed. Food, books.
Amy, feed me,
Food,
read me.
read me. Give me pretty books. So it makes sense then that Nesta realizes through the house's actions that it has become her friend. Quote, "I think you might be my only friend," Nesta said, then ground her way into the tub's welcoming warmth. The house was apparently so pleased by her words that as soon as she lay back, a tray appeared across the width of the tub, laden with a massive piece of chocolate cake. Is this a food is power moment? I felt like this was an offering, not unlike the mating bond. It's a confirmation of love. It's like offering food or sacrifice to a god. It is a show of reverence, which is interesting, right? If I continue to look at it through the psychoanalytical lens, Nesta, just like in her conversations with Cassian, has to go a really roundabout way through the house to show her the affection that she desires.
Yep. So I want to also keep talking about this bath that the house sets up for Nesta. Quote, "The house said nothing, but when she stepped into her bathroom, she found that it wasn't an ordinary bath. The house had added an assortment of oils that smelled of rosemary and lavender. She breathed in the heady, beautiful scent inside." I am going to be talking about this through a religious lens. I don't think I've talked about it yet in this book, or I forgot to. Or I didn't say it's religious lens, but you've definitely heard me talk about this in previous seasons. And that is the concept that baths are meant to be cleansing and baptismal. So before all of this, Nesta has expressed that she can't stand baths because it reminds her of going into the cauldron, that she has taken cold baths in order to fight away the fear of going inside the water. And that makes sense because Nesta hasn't really been able to forgive herself and to cope through her trauma. So every time that she was trying to quote unquote bathe her sins, again, I'm not saying that she's going into the bath saying, "I'm washing away my sins." It's symbolism. And she's unable to do that. So you have a moment like this where she basically collapses in there. And you start to kind of get this moment of the cleansing of the sins. But because it's mixed with food and an offering and chocolate cake, it's not that full cleansing baptismal moment as you would get in, let's say, the Air of Fire. There was if you haven't read that yet, or if you have, there is a bath scene where you're like, that is what this means, is symbolism of cleansing of sins.
You want to take a sip?
Yeah, we do.
All right, so we are now in chapter 15, and I'm going to start with a breadcrumb. Nesta stares into the pit at the bottom of the library. Quote, Ahead of her, the darkness beckoned down the ramp, like it was an entry into some dark pit of hell. The darkness seemed to rise and fall like it was breathing. She'd stared too long into its depths. It might gaze back. Now, I like this personification of the darkness because it foreshadows how Nesta breathes life into the house. And that's a breadcrumb, obviously, for later in the book. But I want to talk about this scene with the knowledge that the house becomes alive and the darkness is the heart of the house.
Especially where she's viewing herself in that darkness, and the fact that this is a darkness that does house abused women, and how that combination of different types of darkness can reflect back onto Nesta. And I'm not saying that being abused is darkness. I'm just saying that women in this book are coping through a lot.
Now, from the psychoanalytical perspective, the darkness of the house's heart, which Nesta learns around winter solstice, reflects, in my opinion, the darkness in Nesta's own heart, kind of like what Jack was alluding to. And because Nesta has not yet accepted the darkness within herself, she therefore is afraid of the darkness here at the bottom of the library. And that is emphasized in this quote. The bottom of the library was like, quote, the womb from which all life had come and would return, neither good nor evil, only dark, dark, dark. Nesta. Her name drifted to her as if rising from the depths of some black ocean. Nesta. It slid along her bones, her blood. She had to pull back, pull away.
Creepy ass reading. I love it.
Thanks.
Just that one line about the womb. I like that there is a dark feminine power and energy to this. The fact that this darkness is neither good nor evil. It is a place where everything is created, the womb itself, and that there is depth to that. I don't know. I love this idea of motherhood not necessarily being darkness or necessarily good, but rather a blank slate for the world to begin with.
Yeah.
There's a line from a Bad Bunny song, and I think it goes, I think if I translate it correctly, but along the lines of women didn't come from Adam's men's ribs. We all come from women's pelvis. Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah. But he says it better than I.
What I also think this is, because there's a lot of this later in the book, it's very mother coded. And what I perceive as the mother seems to have a fondness for Nesta. And so to what extent is this all also an allusion to the mother? I don't know. Just a random thought.
I mean, we know the mother is the one at the very end who lets Nesta keep some power. So Nesta gives the cauldron all of her power back, but she gets to keep some power. And how much of that is power from the mother now?
Right. But also, the cauldron has been called the cradle from which all life has come in the past.
SJM's confusing as hell.
There's a lot going on that I think implies something. We'll see.
Yep.
Now, Gwyn comes by and gets creeped out by the darkness, and she explains that other priestesses have experienced weird things with the darkness as well. She says, quote, they say the dark has trailed them right to their doors. Now, we know that the darkness is the house, and if it's trailing them to the doors, it might be looking for a friend. Gwyn goes on to describe the darkness, quote, I can feel something like a cat, small and clever and curious. It's watching. Now, there was a moment earlier in an earlier chapter that I accidentally think I've deleted my note, or it's in the breadcrumbs, but Nesta felt the house like a cat winding itself through her legs just a couple chapters ago after she said thank you to it. So this is a direct correlation that we might miss. Another thing to keep in mind or to think about is the fact that for a long time, Nesta's going to hold back telling her full truth or history to Gwyn and Emery, and it doesn't happen until the end of the Blood Rite. I say that because Gwyn right now is afraid of the darkness and implies that others are afraid of the darkness. And is that a potential reason why Nesta worries no one will accept the darkness within her, since this darkness is reflecting her? Now, this makes Nesta's willingness to be vulnerable with Gwyn meaningful. No, it's another moment of reciprocity, but unlike with Cassian, Nesta is initiating. Nesta starts mentioning that training with Cassian is meant to curb her bad behavior. And although she doesn't give a ton of detail, it's enough that Gwyn responds when Nesta asks a personal question. Quote, the sight of that blue in Gwyn's hand made Nesta blurt, why don't you wear that stone on your head like the others? Gwyn pocketed the gem, because I don't deserve to.
It's Gwyn having guilt. It's another moment of being an interesting counter to Nesta's guilt. While Gwen holds on to that guilt and tries to be better, they both believe they don't deserve it. But while Nesta internalizes it and spirals, Gwen just tries to be better and rise above. And I'm not saying either are healthy.
Now, during training, Nesta does consider calling in her bargain. Quote, she had half a mind to call in their bargain and order Cassian to never make her do another squat again. And I feel that. And this is the kind of petulance that Nesta's going to summon when she actually does use the bargain later on. It's important to know that she has thought of using the bargain for petty things like this. Mm-hmm. So it shouldn't be surprising when she uses it for a petty reason, because honestly, she never thinks about using the bargain any other way.
So at this point, she's back to training, not in the library.
Oh, yes. Sorry. She is back to training, not in the library. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, Nesta has started to show empathy for the priestesses, and that empathy now starts to extend towards Cassian, especially when Cassian tells her about his mother. Quote, horror lurched through her. She'd known Cassian was lowborn, but that level of cruelty because of it, I just want to point out that it's interesting that when it comes to Nesta and Cassian, they are opposites when it comes to their mothers. And despite that difference, it makes them both more empathetic towards each other. What do I mean? Quote, I fought like hell to prove my worth to the Illyrians. Cassian's eyes glittered. To prove that my mother brought something good into this world. Now, that is a direct contrast to Nesta thinking of herself as a creature that her mother created, where Cassian wants to prove that his mother brought something good into the world. I think it's through Nesta's empathy that she recognizes, oh shit, like, I've been cruel to Cassian, more cruel than I realized. And she feels regret and shame from that. And I think it had to be related to his mother.
Yeah.
For her to feel that, because she's never had a mother who loved her, that she could truly love back. And mothers are going to be so important to Nesta's growth in the end.
Yes, absolutely. When Nesta realizes that Cassian is bracing himself for her attack after opening up to her, and that reality is what hits so hard for her. Quote, oily shame slithered through her. She'd done that, brought this level of defensiveness to him. Heaviness weighed on her, started gnawing on her. So Nesta said, show me another set of movements. That is Nesta's way of trying to fix this emotional intimacy. There is no emotional intimacy. She's kind of butchered it. But the only way that she can try to fix this in this moment is through a physical act. And I believe that's why she's going to rely on sex, and why later on in this very chapter, we're going to get one of their first more intimate moments.
I think that's a great point, because at the end of the day, that's her way of saying, I know you want me to train. I know you're attracted to me. And so my olive branch is to engage in those physical things that you want of me, even though I cannot emotionally engage with you.
They're not great communicators. Even at the end, they're not great communicators, but they go their separate ways. Then they come back for dinner because the house forces Nesta to eat dinner with Cassian, and they're chit-chatting over dinner, having a real conversation. And then that's when Cassian opens up about all the monsters he's captured, and she is just horrified to learn all about it.
And what is interesting is that we realize Cassian does have a lot of trauma from the things that he's had to do throughout his life. And even though his trauma is different from Nesta's, the haunting of that trauma puts the individual through, and the coping mechanisms that Cassian and Nesta rely on are ultimately the same. They are universal things. Cassian tells Nesta, quote, you learn to live with the memories, how to block the horrors from your present thoughts. but they still lurk there in the back of your mind. This is a great time for Nesta to get to know Cassian, and she's actually very content getting to know Cassian and asking questions. But the second Cassian turns the questions around and asks about Nesta, especially when it's questions that are on topics that she feels anger around, for example, her power, Nesta gets angry. And what Cassian doesn't know, but we can tell from her perspective, is Nesta gets mad that she even has powers because she couldn't use them, and they remind her of her lack of humanity and all the ways that she's failed. So what does Nesta do? Nesta turns into a predator to defend herself against Cassian's questions. Quote, Nesta's fingers curled into claws at her side. She took a step toward him. The description of Nesta's hands as claws is very similar to the monsters Cassian just talked about. So I just wanted to make that visual comparison.
I'm happy that you made that comparison, because in this moment when Cassian's riling her up, asking every triggering question he could, and her claws are out, we also have this moment. Quote, she was baring her teeth at his still smirking face. Cassian surveyed her, gazed into her eyes, and breathed. Beautiful. He said a little bit earlier that Nesta was pure Fae. Even before she turned human, she was full Fae. And we're seeing in this moment that he likes it. He likes this wild beast that he gets to tame. And that's because Nesta in this moment is embracing her id, her base primal animalistic part.
I agree with what you're saying. I don't know if I agree about Cassian taming the beast that she is. I think they get to be beasts together, hence the sex.
Okay, how do I say this? It's the facade. It's their kink of, ooh, I'm taming the beast with my cock, and then she's can't be tamed. No, I think it's the allure of someone who can't be tamed.
Right. And that her wildness can match his own wildness.
Yes. Yep.
Because she wants him to be unleashed, and he wants her to be unleashed, and blah,
yet,
blah, blah.
And I want him to say, I love you, and you will hear me complain until the bitter end. So Cassian does give Nesta a few good lines here. I know it's good lines because people highlighted it in their Kindle. The first one being, quote, the first time I saw that look on your face, you were still human. And I was almost on my knees for you. Something along those lines. And I was thinking, oh, knees, like a prayer. The fact that she wasn't even Fae yet, but she's still somehow connected to this religious persona. There's just a lot to do with Nesta and godlike imagery. Another quote, your power is a song, and one I've waited a very, very long time to hear, Nesta. Nesta loves music. He knows she loves music, so he's saying something that's going to resonate with her. For us who may not understand it, I'm not saying I don't understand it. It's just not the most it's romantic, but it's not like the thing that would get me the way that it would get Nesta. So he really knows / SJM really knows what to say to really get her. They don't kiss or anything, but he smells her neck in a hot way. That's the scene, right? Like that's basically the scene, is that he sniffs her and then he tells her he's going to jerk off thinking about her. Is the summary of this scene. He tells her, quote, I'm always thinking of that look on your face. But I do want to emphasize this is after dinner. Food equals sex.
Mutual masturbation.
Which literally is what's leading to it. They had food together. He smelled her neck and said, I'm going to go jerk off to your face.
And so what does Nesta do? She's got to have some personal time with her hands as well.
Yep.
And she tells the house, come back at dawn. And I think it's hilarious, first of all. But second, because the house doesn't have eyes. But if the walls could talk, whatever. Nesta, though, if we continue this psychoanalytical lens, it's her subconscious that she's talking to. Like, hey, I need you to not think right now. I think I don't want to be accountable for what I'm about to do.
Such a good point. The house is her.
The house is her.
Yeah.
And so she wants to hide her true desire from the rational part of her, which is the house.
That's
right
a
now.
very good fucking point. I'm proud of you. I am so proud of you. You get a sip in order because you won. So
thank you.
Quick sip, then we keep going. We are in the last chapter of this episode. That is chapter 16. And this is the next morning after the horny hallway encounter. And they meet at the breakfast table, the horniest of tables in this house. Quote, she'd beaten him to the table and had been reading a book while she ate. It lay closed now, but from the spine, he gleaned that it was one of the romances she favored so much. Sex and food and eating. I'm not even trying. I'm not even doing my job anymore. I'm just reading what SJM is putting down. And even if they're not talking about sex, she's reading about sex. And we all know that this table and this area is going to get some very sexy sex things happening later.
And he looks at her hand and then she hides her hand, which clues him into the fact that she masturbated last night. Like, it's very horny.
Food is sex is food, and sex is power.
Yep. What's hilarious, though, the fact that Cassian told her last night, I'm going to jerk off to you, essentially. Nesta still doubts whether he's interested.
Yeah.
Quote, whatever willingness had been in his eyes last night seemed reluctant today, as if he couldn't help, didn't want that heat between them, that tension. He'd practically run out of the room to avoid her. It's amusing because she's an unreliable narrator, because later she's like, well, I did see he had a boner. And so, yeah, it speaks to her self-loathing still, that she can't even fathom that he would genuinely be interested in her. Now, they have a bunch of banter, it's full of innuendo, and Nesta huffs a laugh, to which Cassian is shocked. Quote, his shock was enough that Nesta dropped her smile, which I think is really, really sad. Just as much as Cassian is like, oh, I tore my heart out and she's going to stomp on it, Nesta's like, oh, I laughed and he's going to laugh at me.
Yeah.
And I think that when Nesta laughs, it's truly a vulnerable part of her that we're seeing, because she doesn't remember the last time she laughed, and it's a symbol of hope. And so she has to hide that because that's not comfortable for her. Now, when they get to training, Cassian does his own training montage for a little bit, and Nesta fixates on his physical form and therefore her physical desire for him. Quote, he'd been professional during their lesson, utterly professional and distant, as if this training ring was sacred to him. Nesta couldn't tear her eyes away as he completed his exercises, panting softly. She tried not to wonder if that panting was how he'd sounded last night when he'd pleasured himself. I want to go back to something you said, because you said that there's a lot of religious imagery from Cassian's point of view associated with Nesta. And now we're starting to see that from Nesta's point of view towards Cassian. She will understand how the training ring is sacred later.
Yeah.
Right now, even though she can understand worshiping his body, it's only associated with pleasure. So I just want to point that out, because she's going to go through her own growth. And it's important that she finds her routine and her training to be sacred, because you can't justify her being a Valkyrie any other way.
No, not at all. But I'm really happy that you pointed out this idea that Nesta's starting to view him in an almost holy way. I don't know how to say it, reverent. We'll call it a reverent way. And she thinks, quote, people would name their children after him. Warriors would want to be him. A fine warrior would be known as Cassian Reborn. She'd called him a brute. It's almost this shame of blasphemy that she cursed his name so. It's one of those moments that if you go into the religious lens that it's sacrilegious almost. But it's also the shame that she's putting him down. And it's unfortunate because I think there's another layer of shame with her realizing that Cassian is universally liked while she is universally disliked. And yet she's the one in his whole entire world right now who is bringing him down, who is shaming him, which is really sad when you think about it.
Yeah.
That he's liked by all, and the one person who's shitting on him is her.
Yeah, which really speaks to why she will finally admit she doesn't deserve him.
Yeah.
Because he is too good and she is too horrible.
And that's true at this point. Like, that is true. There's a lot of counters to Nesta. I've talked about like Emery being another counter to Nesta in this book that I didn't even realize how many there were. Another one being Rhys, Cassian, and Azrael themselves. So they're talking about the blood right. here, quote, and this is Cassian talking. What they learned was that we loved each other as true brothers, and there was nothing that we wouldn't do, no one we wouldn't kill to reach each other, to save each other. They consider themselves brothers. They always talk about themselves as brothers. And yet their love, their relationship, their dedication to one another is the exact opposite of Nesta, Elaine, and Farah. We always talk about the three brothers for the three sisters, right? But what we don't look at is how fundamentally different they are. And that is the fact that those brothers have built a foundation on security and love, and the sisters are so far from anything like that.
Right. And I'm going to blame their parents for that.
Oh, absolutely. It's not their fault.
Yeah, but Nesta's able to find her own found family that will replicate
Yeah,
the three brothers.
I'm counting this as a point as to why Azriel and Elaine won't happen.
Oh, yeah, I know. You say it with a smile.
I didn't realize I was smiling.
You were. You're like,
oops. So there's a small moment I find to be interesting. There's a lot of things that I find to be interesting. And that is when Nesta is trying to figure out the right words to say. And she thinks, quote, she didn't know how to elegantly phrase it, not like silver-tongued Reese. That was such a specific thing to throw in there. The fact that she's not as smooth as him. And another one, and like we talked about this earlier, where Reese is a mirror to Nesta. Are they necessarily the same person? No, but Reese is holding up a mirror to Nesta in many ways, forcing her to see herself of what's going on. And there's that mutual disdain, like we talked about. They're both at their lowest points in many different ways.
Nesta, though, is inspired to ask Cassian if the priestesses can train with her and him in the House of Wind. And Cassian responds, quote, the priestesses might not even be able to stomach having me present. Nesta immediately replies, you'd never hurt anyone like that. Another instance where Nesta is inherently she has full faith in Cassian's goodness. There is no question about it. And again, is another indicator why she's going to believe they can't be together, because she would ruin his goodness. I also think the fact that she is such a believer in his goodness is going to exacerbate the hurt she feels when he talks about her with the inner circle, because it brings into question his goodness and his faith in her.
Yep. I want to make one more point about the Archeron sister dynamic. Quote, how could she explain the triangle between her and her sisters, the self-loathing that threatened to consume her every time she looked at her sister's face? It's complicated family, but as I've said before, Farah is the embodiment of Nesta's failures. Of course, Nesta can't stand up to Farah. She has zero thing to stand on, platform to stand on. Like, there is nothing for her to, I don't know, save face with, I guess, but it's easier for Nesta to try to save Elaine because she never stepped up for Farah. So at least she can go and pretend to be there for Elaine without ever really having to be there for Elaine. And again, no one gets mad at Elaine, and that pisses me off. And Nesta's relationship with Farah is the worst because of how closely related their father is to all of this. Nesta was ready to let them all die, to let them be miserable and suffer just to prove a point that their father couldn't take care of them, chose to not step up. Instead, Farah was the one who kept them alive and delayed the complete damnation of their father. Nesta couldn't completely blame her father for their absolute ruin because Farah kept saving the day by bringing food and keeping them alive. So that's just another layer of Nesta's complication with Farah.
And it is very complicated. That was not a very smooth segue into the fact that Cassian, at the end of the chapter, ends up agreeing with Nesta that, okay, you can invite the priestesses to train if they want. Quote, I like this idea, Ness. His hazel eyes shone bright. I like it a lot. And for some reason, the words meant everything. Nesta will never admit how much she needs people's approval, especially when it comes to Cassian. But it is an antidote to her beliefs that she is abhorrent. And once again, is a reason why the possibility of him disapproving of her when he talks about her with the inner circle hurts her so much because his approval is key to her progress.
Yep.
All right, we've come to the end of our analysis. So before we wrap up this part of our episode on these set of chapters, I have to ask a question, which is, what does Nesta's relationship with the priestesses represent? Jack, you get to go first.
With different literary lenses.
With different literary lenses.
To be approaching with a religious lens, and I'm going to take a different, interesting approach. I am going to say that Nesta, after everything we've learned and discussed here, if I were to write a paper and I would prove a point, I would say that Nesta is almost a God returned. We're going to say Jesus-like figure, a Messiah, a child of their God coming to this place to find peace with the priestesses. Nesta is constantly associated in a religious way, and we know for a fact that she is born from the cauldron and has the cauldron's power, and that is part of their God system there. And Nesta is their God and is coming here to be their salvation, to bring healing to them. I'm making this up as I go. So
Yeah.
you can kind of hear me. I'm just like, whoa, am I onto something? So you can say that she is a godlike figure coming in to bring salvation and healing through this training. You can also say that it is a reconnection of faith, of justifying the horrible things that happen in this world. One of those things, like a connection of faith. So that's my religious lens. I'm done now. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do a combination of Marxist, but like true Marxist in terms of class, and feminist, which is in a lot of ways, the priestesses, although they are not necessarily a lower class of high fae, they have been degraded by a different class, right? They have been put down and therefore sheltered away because they're afraid, they're mutilated, abused. And in a lot of ways, it does replicate a form of oppression that we see. And Nesta has been subjected to similar sort of class differentiation between her and the inner circle. And so what society has done to the priestesses, the inner circle has done to Nesta.
Ooh.
And that's why she's able to connect with them so much. And what they represent, not only is it a sisterhood where women are safe, where people like them are safe, but it's an opportunity also for rebellion, where why do we have to accept what has been done to us? Why do we have to accept where we've been put? For Nesta, it's adhering to what's been asked of her. But when she goes on to invite the priestesses, invite Emery, become a Valkyrie, like those are not what was intended. And so she builds her own, I wouldn't say cult, but she builds her own system or community that is so different from what they started out as. And I think it's an interesting, like, it's not a direct, like, class war, obviously, but it's interesting to think of it like that.
Yeah, I love it. If I wanted to come in with a different literary perspective, I think you could make a case for this being like the eco-environmental lens, but we know that they're under a mountain. We know that they can't actually see sunlight, that the light is fake and it's charmed to see the light from outside, but it's not real.
I thought it was the other way around.
What?
I thought they do have windows, but they're glamored from the outside so that people don't know there are windows.
No, because it's all underground.
Okay.
Right?
Inside the library, but in their chambers, there are windows, is what Gwyn says later.
Well, we'll confirm.
We'll go back to that later. It's not important for this moment.
Okay. Well, I'll just do this in reference. Either way, Nesta's associated with flames, which is light and elemental, and coming in with that. So I'm just saying, if you wanted to like think harder than what we have, because we've been talking for 2 hours, feel free to.
Well, I mean, there's also the psychoanalytical, right? If SJM does such a good job in this book reflecting Nesta in every situation, interaction, relationship. And in a lot of ways, as we've said before, the priestesses reflect Nesta and her situation in a different way, because Nesta believes the priestesses to be inherently good and therefore inherently deserving of better. And so in some ways, from a psychoanalytical lens, we could argue Nesta chooses to help the priestesses, both because they represent her in a way, but because that's what she wants someone to do for her. And so she's kind of like, okay, well, I don't deserve it, but you do, so I'm going to at least help you.
Yeah, very true. What chapter do they talk about it?
Windows?
Yeah. Was it 13?
It's after they run away from the darkness, Gwyn. And she talks about her little stone, I think.
Here it is. We have windows in our dormitory. At Nesta's confusion, she clarifies they're glamored from sight on the mountainside. Only the High Lord knows about them. So they're deep in a mountain. Gwyn says, no, once we come in, we do not leave unless it's time for us to part, though some of us remain forever and never see sunlight again, never feel fresh air, implying that it's all inside. Like
she says that?
That's what Nesta says. Like, you never see sunlight again. And she says, no, we have windows in our dormitories. Nesta looks confused. They're glamored from sight on the mountainside. Only the High Lord knows about them since they're his spell. So that they're not actual windows. They're fake windows to the outside.
So I interpret that differently. So Nesta's like, you never see sunlight? And Gwyn's like, no, we see sunlight. We have windows. They're glamored from the mountainside. So they're glamored outside the mountain, people looking towards the mountain, and only the High Lord knows that they exist. Because Abraxas,
Yeah.
has a window
Up high that they created. But that's the very top of the mountain. I need someone to like just say in the comments of Spotify, just explain it. If more people agree with you, then I'll get on board. But I'm still like, I'm not fully there. Apparently SJM is going to be on another podcast. By the time this comes out, it might have already been out. Call Her Daddy.
Really?
The Call Her Daddy podcast?
Oh, Call Her Daddy. Oh, I thought you were saying to me it was in addition to Call Her Daddy.
Oh,
and I was like,
no.
What?
No, I'd lose it. So hopefully we'll have an update. All right.
Fingers
Let's
crossed.
sign out. Thanks for listening to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. Join us Wednesday for our breadcrumbs and broomsticks discussion from today's chapters from Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Silver Flames.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps other readers find us. And of course, we'd love to hear what you thought of today's episode. Share your comments through our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com, and we might feature your feedback in a future mini episode or in a Patreon exclusive episode.
For merch and more ways to support the show, head to booktalkforbooktalk.com. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. And don't forget to join us as we keep the analysis going by subscribing to our Substack to get more insights into the romantasy and romance genres. Head to the subtextsocietyjournal.substack.com. Bye.